I do think you have to be psychotic to be a good founder.
You do?
But what Podium pulled off in SMB takes everything coming together right.
Yeah, I mean, to go from 1 to 100 in 4 years and burn through like less than $40 million to do it was insane.
Yeah,
insane. It was near perfect product market fit. There was a year we had 90% quota attainment by rep, overall quota attainment of 107%. Like it was nuts. What's normal in a software company is about 40% of reps are hitting quota.
Yeah.
And that was the secret sauce of Podium. And I was in an emergency room at 2 a.m. in Mission Viejo, and I was like, I'm going to be rich and dead.
Yeah.
And that's just like, I'm not doing it. I called our partner Miles at Excel the next day. I was like, I'm out, and not like in a few months. Like
that day.
And then I flew here and kind of told the crew, and I was gone. Took a year off after Podium, and it kind of forced me into figuring out like, who am I? What am I going to do next? Like, what do I like to do? Like, who do I actually want to be? And I spent like 9 months kind of riding my bike and going through. It was like a tough mental health year for me, like everyone during COVID. But trying to figure out like, what do I want to do next?
So Dave comes to you end of 2020, tracks you over to Entrata.
I came here because I'd never been a part of a generational business.
Yeah.
That would last decades. And this one I knew immediately. I'm like, this company will be here in 30 years. And those are rare. Like,
so that puts the valuation of Entrata over $4 billion. I think that's public information that was announced with the announcement, right?
Yep.
So that's insane. Welcome back to the Startup Ignition podcast. Thank you so much for watching the last episode. And I teased this episode a little bit by saying who maybe our guest was going to be. So we had a little bit of guesses online and within our community. But today we have a very special guest. We're old news. We're John and Tyler. We're the co-hosts, the founders, CEO, and managing partners of Startup Ignition and Ventures and everything within our ecosystem. But today we are joined by Adam Edmunds, the current CEO of Entrata. But your background and resume goes much deeper than that. But right now you're claiming Entrata, you're full boat, all in on Entrata, and it's going super well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But I have a little bio for you. And
okay.
I tried to pass it by Adam before, but he's a busy dude. So I hope I get everything right here. But I used AI to help me write this bio. So let's see how AI did for me. Okay. So Adam Edmunds is the CEO of Entrata, the leading operating system for the multifamily property industry. Since stepping in back in 2020, that's what AI said it was.
Yep.
Adam has helped lead Entrata to raise over $500 million. And you just raised another round from Blackstone, right?
Yep.
$200 million back in February?
Closed in April. Yep.
Okay. I knew it was a few months ago because I actually commented on your post on LinkedIn saying, Adam, this is awesome. You should come on our podcast. And then it happened. So thank you for coming. But so that puts the valuation of Entrata over $4 billion. I think that's public information that was announced with the announcement, right?
Yep.
So that's insane, a $4 billion valuation in Entrata. And a lot of people think that Entrata and a lot of these companies like, Ryan Smith's Qualtrics are like these yesterday born companies. People don't understand that these are 20-year grinds that have been going through the ringer to get to where they're at. But that's not it. I want to go beyond Entrata in this bio. So you've also were at Podium prior to Entrata, helping them raise, but also get to an amazing ARR. You also were the founder of Allegiance, which sold to Maritz, which then rebranded to the MaritzCX that we know today.
Yep.
And on top of that, probably all the way back to when you knew him, you were doing your own startups and awesome startups, even back as a student, like Silent Whistle, your LinkedIn claims all the way back there, which sold as well, right?
Yeah, sold that in 2009.
2009. So this dude is an amazing entrepreneur, also a very close friend, and awesome supporter of what we're doing. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I just can't wait to dive in. Do you have any comments before we start?
Just Adam and I go way back, and I remember the first time I met him. We'll talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. Hey, but before we do, I do icebreakers on this podcast. So with every guest, we start out the podcast with like a 2-3 minute thing just to loosen up and get to know each other. And so our audience gets to know you as an entrepreneur and who you are and who Adam is, what's behind the scenes. Even though we love all the business insights that are probably going to come in this episode, let's do it really chill with an icebreaker really quick. So I'm going to do startup hot takes with Adam Edmunds. Okay. So these are popular hot takes that are opinionated hot takes. And I want to know your take on it and your take on it too. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. Here we go. So this is the first one. AI isn't just replacing tasks, it's redefining entire job categories. Dario from Anthropic, which is the makers of Claude AI, he says he's warning up to 50% of entry-level white-collar and blue-collar jobs may be gone by even as close in 3 to 5 years. So he's claiming 50% of white and blue-collar jobs are going to be replaced by AI by 2028. Thoughts on that? What's your take on that claim?
I probably know the white collar world a little bit better. I think a lot of those jobs will be gone, but I really think the better way to say it is they'll be changed. Like,
are you seeing AI impacting what you're doing?
For sure. We bought an AI company in Tel Aviv last year. So you think of our industry, we sell to apartment communities that are trying to nurture and get new residents to move in.
Yeah.
And those residents have lots of questions. That's a really easy problem for AI to solve.
Yeah, just conversation.
Maintenance. Yeah. So we have a product we sell, and then we use AI internally really, really extensively in our R&D teams and our operational teams. Like, it's been a big push for us for the last year or so. And yeah, it's causing people have to like either, get on board with it or kind of get left behind. I do think a lot of jobs as they exist today are going to be modified pretty dramatically.
What do you think?
And I agree with that, but it's the timing issue. So I've been around a long time. They call me the OG, which is supposed to mean original gangster, but I think it's just old guy. And so, what is interesting is the timing. So, for instance, like when microwave ovens were invented, it took 19 years.
Oh, we're going way back. Microwaves.
No, it took 19 years for them to be in everybody's kitchen. Everything takes longer. When I disrupted the Yellow Pages industry, which is my background, people thought the internet was going to make Yellow Pages go out of business in 2 years. They said in 2 years, it won't be Yellow Pages. It took 20 years. Yeah. Everything takes a lot longer to really change society because humans are resistant to change. They aren't like some humans love to adopt change and other people resist it all at any cost. And so I believe it's true, but the timing will be much longer.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not going to be 3 to 5 years. It might be 5 to 15.
Yeah. I was showing in our Entrepreneurship Bootcamp 10 years ago a video called Humans Need to Apply, which is a great video on the internet. And it was making all these predictions, things were going to happen with robotics and AI.
Like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah.
And it still hasn't fully happened yet. Like, let's just even take a look. Taxis aren't gone, even though Uber's a much better experience than a taxi. Okay. And now we've got Waymo. How long before taxis are truly gone? Probably another 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's the first hot take. I have 5 of these. We might have to trim it down to 3.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Next hot take from Reid Hoffman. Okay. LinkedIn founder, right? He said founders who pursue balance, like work-life balance, aren't actually serious founders. Is that like a harsh reality, or do you guys agree on that take or not? So like he's saying you have to be almost psychotic to be a successful founder and just have no work-life balance.
I do think you have to be psychotic to be a good founder.
You do?
But in the good ways. But no, I actually probably disagree with most of what Reid Hoffman says. I read this. It was one of the Andreessen folks who said, I saw this tweet maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and they said there's 4 aspects of life. And if you want to be a founder, you have to pick 2 and be really good at them and abandon the other 2. And that's family, career, community, and friends.
Yeah.
And so for me, that really resonated because I chose family and career and I ignored the other 2 completely. And that worked for me. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think everyone has to be Elon Musk. If you want to build $1 trillion company, you probably have to.
Yeah, you gotta be psychotic.
That's a good way to look at it. And I teach this in the boot camp. This is a very important topic because I like to teach about how to keep your head on straight and live a good life. But I do say, and it goes back. Steve Gibson. Mm-hmm. Steve Gibson taught me many years ago a statement saying entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like nobody else will because it's so hard and so demanding. To live the rest of your life like nobody else can, where you have the choice and freedom to choose what you want to do.
Because you're so rewarded.
And so I tell entrepreneurship is not about becoming a workaholic. It's about, 3 to 7 years of being out of balance. You're going to have a car with one tire overinflated and another tire underinflated, and it's going to be kind of a clunky ride for a while, but it's not forever. You tell your life partner, you tell whatever, this is how it's going to be for so long, and this is the goal and what we're after, and that's how you manage it.
And that's how you build real wealth.
So that is going, I agree with part of what he says. Things are going to be a little out of balance, but at the same time, it's a defined plan. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to cut it to 3. So here's the last one, even though I had 5 planned, because I want to get into Adam's background and story, not just chill on this icebreaker for 20 minutes. Okay, here we go. Last one. With your background of, going to these $1 billion and leadership positions at Podium and now Entrata, and, obviously building your own startups as well, and going from zero to millions and millions of dollars, and obviously billions of dollars in valuation. I thought this was really relevant for you because Paul Graham's Founder Mode, I don't know if you're familiar with his article and where he came out, and he said, founders need to stay deeply involved rather than delegating to get to those oversized and outsized outcomes, those $1 billion unicorn situations. Mm-hmm. And he said founders have to stay in the weeds, right? And this is essential not only for true innovation, but true valuation and progress and success. What do you think? Do you agree with Paul Graham on that statement where founders should be taking this thing from zero to the moon? Or, because I know that you've come in and you've done amazing things in your positions where the founders might have replaced those founders, right?
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I feel like I know and have worked with some of the best founders, and some founders, very few though, I think can go from zero to the moon.
Yeah.
Like Mark Zuckerberg. Most start to, it's the personality traits that make really good founders are very different than those that make really good operators. I always wanted to be the cool founder. Like I wanted to, when I was 23 or 4, when I met you, I wanted to be Mr. Cool Founder guy, but I'm not nuts enough. Like my 2 startups were like, okay, they weren't great. Founders are obsessed with everything, and they are a little psychotic, and they're perfectionists, and they're micromanagers, and they do stay in the details. I'm more about like financial metrics and go-to-market metrics,
and efficiency.
And I can run board meetings and raise money, and I can communicate really well. So I've said this on a couple podcasts. I'm like one of those boring operator guys, but I do agree with this statement. You got to stay close to whatever you're really good at that you bring to the table at a company. If you're an engineer that's running a company, you got to stay close to the product. I try to stay close to customers by staying involved in sales deals and that kind of stuff. So I do think that is important. For any leader. Like I had a CRO ask me recently, he's like, what makes like good reps that turn into good leaders versus good reps that don't? And I said it's the ones who stay in the deals.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that become good leaders.
Right. Cool. Thoughts on that?
Just real quickly, I'll just add that I completely agree. There's very few that can go from zero to the whole distance. Very few. In Utah here in our ecosystem, we've got a few that have done it. But
it also depends on what's the distance, right? It's like, are we selling for 20 million or are we taking this thing to 4 billion?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the difference is like, I do feel like founders in their idea, taking it to scale and growth and getting to a decent sized exit, they can. But it's like, maybe if you're getting into working with Wall Street or taking it to IPO, there's different characters for different jobs.
Let's quote Steve Blank, the father of Lean Startup, who has a great quote. He says, if you want to go from 0 to 800 employees, there's a little secret that you need to learn as a founder, and that is operations. You need to understand financial statements, ratios. You need to understand HR. You need to understand business MBA.
Like what's your LTV to CAC?
Like management.
Yeah.
That's just what it happens to come with it. If you don't pick up those skills and learn those skills and absorb that as you're a founder, being around your board that you've attracted that are, experienced business people, if you're not absorbing that knowledge, like how did you become what you become? You started hanging around a lot of really good business people. And I believe you absorbed and assimilated.
Yeah.
My observation of you, meeting you at the very beginning of your career, right?
Yep.
Is that you just were really good at absorbing business skills and talents from been there, done it people. Would you agree with that statement?
For sure. And that's why I think I became a pretty good operator, because I don't have I think the stuff that makes a good founder, you're born with. It's a little bit more genetic.
And they are a little crazy. Tyler and I will go, some of the best ones are a little
They're
crazy.
a little nuts. And, and that's what makes them really good founders, makes them kind of poor operators. Because good execs don't want to work for crazy micromanagers.
That's why the in-between thing, like one last comment on this is Bill Gates. Bill Gates, look what he did. Bill Gates was a good technologist, but he was actually a genius business person. He was even stronger as a business person, a marketer. And when in the first 10, 15 years of that company, maniacal. And that's a lot of the way he is now, where he's so subdued and all that, is not how he was from age 18 to 30. Okay.
Yeah. And those that can make the transition, I applaud. Like, I think it's amazing. If you can like smooth out some of those rough edges and learn, it's tough though. It's really tough.
I think I've said this like 3 times on previous episodes of this podcast. Like, if you don't have basic financial, like, prowess, like just basic things, you're not going to be a good entrepreneur. You're not going to be a good founder. You have to know those things, like the operating type things.
Yeah, you can't just be a crazy wild man.
Yeah, you can't just be like an innovator.
You have to start understanding once there's numbers and not just zeros on your financial statements, you got to understand what they mean.
But that's a good transition point. So thank you for the icebreaker and for those hot takes and for both of your opinions on it. But you going way back, I saw that you are a master's of accounting.
Yeah.
That's what you studied?
Yeah.
You were in the MAC program at Brigham Young University.
Yep.
Yeah. And you went and got a job at KPMG or no? Or an internship.
Accepted a job.
Yeah,
You accepted a job.
Okay. And what?
I want to tell the story because
Okay,
that's
so
because you
let's get into it.
So because I remember this so clearly. He was a MAC student at BYU.
Who did we just have on this podcast that was a MAC student?
I can't remember right now.
Oh, it was Phil. One of our venture fund portfolio CEOs was also a MAC student. He just came.
He's got a hot. He's one of our investments. Hot company. He was the last one right before this. Just see it.
Shout out to Baton and Phil.
Got from 100,000 to 7 million revenue quick. Okay, cool. So with that though, he's a MAC student walking the halls of the Tanner Building Business School at BYU, and he runs into me and says, "Hey, are you the guy that helps students with their businesses? I've got a little problem." And I go, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, when can you do it?" I go, "Let's go in this room right now." And he proceeds to tell me what he did. I don't remember the mistake you made, but you took,
I do.
You took $50,000 investment from a man who was basically buying a job for his son.
Yeah, and I didn't sign any documents.
Yeah,
you didn't do any documentation.
But I cashed his check.
Yes. And so I sat him down.
Classic.
And the first thing I said was, and this is just a good story because this is really important to understand. It's I teach this in the boot camp too. I say, "Okay, let's start here. Let me see your cap table." And he goes, "What's a cap table?" And he's a MAC student, Master's of Accounting. And that's where I discovered, because that was my first year or two at BYU. And I said, why are they not teaching cap tables in the accounting program?
I'd never heard that term before.
That's insane.
No,
they do that now for sure.
Well, they do now but I instantly said, I told everybody, we've got to start teaching cap tables, not just income statements, balance sheets, and cash flows. If you're going to have people do businesses and in the business school, and they encourage student entrepreneurship a little bit at least, right? And so anyway, we got him straightened out. There's a long story to that and everything we did there to straighten that out.
I just want to say real quick to everybody listening, do not take money and or cash a check without documentation around that money. That is a big no-no. But Adam
anyway,
did it, but it's okay. But
I
for
will
those
tell you
listening,
something I noticed something in Adam the first minute I met him. I said, this guy is going to be successful what he does. He had an idea to take advantage of a new law in accounting that was coming out at the time, a policy and accounting standard. And he did all this. He made some mistakes there. But what happened was he was very teachable, very humble. He would listen from been there, done it people. He was very decisive. He's the perfect thing. Decisive, strong, young guy, but also teachable, and you'd listen to advice from been there, done it people. And I think that's been helped you a lot along the way.
I had no idea what I was doing. So I grew up in a really blue collar family, like next to my grandpa's farm in South Jordan. Like I grew up like shoeing horses and like I don't even remember what you call cutting the tails off sheep when they're like, that's the kind of stuff I did growing up.
Wow, that's crazy.
Not saying I'm like was a cowboy or anything, but like I remember when I was 14 or 15, Bruce Huff, like Derek and Julianne's dad, they were our neighbors. He taught me what the stock market was when I was like 14 years old. And I was just like, what? So, I was going to be a doctor my whole life. I go to BYU, end up majoring in business, kind of get sucked into that public accounting track, mostly just because accounting was easy for me. Like numbers are just kind of my thing. And then I took a class from Larry H. Miller, and he's like, he told his story. That was the class, is Larry Miller just saying, this was my life. And I, one day he said, if any of you want to start a business, do it now. Because you don't have mortgages and you don't have kids and you're not paying for braces. And if it doesn't work out, you have a degree, go get a job. And I just bought into that, kind of came up with this idea for Silent Whistle, but I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't know anything about business, about tech, about anything. So probably the best thing I did is while I was still a student, I took advantage of people like him. And then he introduced me to Josh James. And because I was a student anybody would meet with me.
Yeah.
And so I got to the CEO of Franklin Covey, and I got to the CEO of Overstock.com and the CEO of Ancestry, and they all started to buy my product, even knowing it was fake, because they just felt bad for me. But that's probably how my career launched.
It wasn't built yet by saying it was fake.
It wasn't real.
It was just a presentation.
It was an idea.
Couple lessons in that first thing though. So can I share some of the story from there? So he'd taken 50,000, didn't do the paperwork. It was a gentleman that really was wanting just his son to work with Adam and get a job and be involved in it, right? But it wasn't right fit. So we got Adam out of that 50,000. The guy had to be paid extra, and you got out of that. And then you also went into the next deal for money to get that, and you signed a no shop with a known venture capitalist. I'm just going to say that.
Oh, yeah.
And if you remember that. And so he signed a no shop, which I also don't like people to do. I say, don't sign no shop if you don't have to, because then for 45, 60 days, he couldn't talk to any other investors.
Startup Ignition Ventures, we don't have a no shop.
Yeah. And so he does the no shop. And then the investor actually didn't do anything for that 45, 60 days to help him. He loaned him the $50,000 to pay this guy back, but didn't do anything. And so then Adam had to go to his parents to get help to pay that guy back. And so this is the kind of stuff that you want a mentor to help you through this a little bit. But after that was done, then there was one thing I noticed. Adam was actually doing something really cool. And I knew about this company that one of the professors was involved with, Gary Rhodes, who's worked with us. And I knew these companies should be together. And one day I came in and I said, these two companies need to be joined together. And I made them go talk about a merger, and they didn't want to at first. And I actually forced them to do it, and it ended up happening. And that was kind of interesting because you guys took their existing company and made it run so much better.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to run the company. They started it with an idea as a professor and some kind of old guys that were working on business. And you came in and just sold the heck out of it compared to that. And that's your first idea merged in with that idea.
Yeah, those always stayed separate. They never became accretive to each other.
Yeah.
And so Silent Whistle we sold in 2009, and Allegiance kind of kept running. We sold that to 2014.
Yeah. But what's cool though,
you have good memory. These are all pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And a lot of them I forgot.
Yeah, I know.
I forgot about that exclusivity.
But the thing is there's good lessons in here, and what it is just that. Also, a great story people are going to love to hear is that he went on and Adam was smart. He went in and he had graduated, and he did accept that job at KPMG, but he goes, this entrepreneurship thing is going to be better. And he turns down the job with 1 week to go.
Oh, I was in trouble for that.
Yeah. And BYU freaked out.
Yeah.
And I had to,
Why?
I run defense for you. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And because it's not cool to accept one of the big four positions, and it's a cut. He was so good at
Declined the big four.
He was so good at accounting. He got one of the coveted jobs in Salt Lake. So a BYU graduate getting a Salt Lake City job at KPMG was coveted. And Adam got that job. But
and BYU counts their success by probably placement of those jobs.
Yeah, well, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. 1 week before starting the job to say, I'm selling my BMW, I'm selling my house, and going to do entrepreneurship, and I'm not taking the KPMG job. First of all, his wife had to handle that. And then number two, BYU said, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then how it got noticed was, he was actually graduated, but he wanted to enter the competition for entrepreneurship, but he had to be a student. So he signed up for 6 hours of online credit classes to qualify as a student. And remember, I don't know if you know, but I was there with you the whole way on this. And then he wins the whole thing and gets a big prize. It was actually like $12,500.
I think it was 10 grand.
10 grand.
I think it was 10
not
grand.
bad for a student, right?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
he got 10 grand and he won this prize. But then they were saying he didn't take the KPM job, and then he sneaks in with these credits to get that, and they were all over you. And I said, guys, knock it off.
Now they want my money. So I think they're
Isn't
over
it
it.
crazy?
I think they're over it.
Isn't it crazy? I said, this is our whole motto: learn, earn, and return. This guy's going to go out and earn. You're going to want him to return someday. You better be nice to this guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were a great student entrepreneur. I think you did some really intriguing things.
I forgot about that one too.
You forgot about that too. But you did that, and that was really cool. And entrepreneurs do what they need to do to survive. But the funny thing is the story there is that you could have gone down a traditional working for the man role and had a great job, become partner at KPMG, had a great life working for the man. There's nothing wrong with that. But 1 week to go, you chose the entrepreneurship
Well, when you
path.
call it working for the man, there's some insinuated problem with that, but yeah, sure.
There you go. Okay.
Working for the man.
Okay, that's an old statement from my old days. Okay, anyway, that's kind of my beginnings with it, and I won't talk so much later, but I really enjoyed being part. I invested in your first 3 rounds with Silent Whistle. Loved it. Yeah.
So what happened with Silent Whistle then? You said you sold it in 2009.
So Silent Whistle was like, because of that law that was passed in 2002, Sarbanes-Oxley, it grew really quickly. We went from 0 to like 4 million of revenue, probably within like 3 or 4 years. And it was super profitable. It was probably kicking off like 1.5 of cash. But then I kind of became pretty excited about this kind of customer experience space that was starting to happen. Like I remember talking in 2008 or so to Gartner. There was one Gartner analyst that kind of covered the survey space. And I remember him telling me, he said, there's 200 survey companies, all under 5 million of revenue right now. But like, it's clear. I was like, this is going to become a massive industry. So sold Silent Whistle at like literally the downturn. It was like September 2009 when nothing was happening. And part of the reason we had to do that is I couldn't find cash to go raise. No one was investing. Like people think the last few years was bad. It was nothing. The great financial crisis was 10 times worse than this.
Yeah.
Really?
Way
We've
worse.
talked about it a lot to people. And 2008, 2000, it was all.
You're just saying as far as
bad.
venture activity?
Everything.
so bad.
It was brutal. Yeah.
And not only that,
half of venture funds died during that time.
Oh, yeah.
Like they couldn't raise new
I mean,
funds.
venture funds are dying right now.
Yeah.
I mean, their
Tyler,
portfolios are zero.
There were literally about 3,000 to 4,000 venture firms in the United States in 2007. By 2010, there were about 400.
All right, I'm looking
It's
it up
crazy.
from 2021 to now. How many VC firms?
Not 2021. He's talking about the.
I know. I
2008.
want to.
Yeah.
I want to compare it for
And now it's back up to about 3,000.
That
Yeah.
seems right.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. But anyway, that was a horrible time. I can't believe you sold it in September 2009.
Yeah, I didn't have any other way to raise cash at the time. I tried to buy Qualtrics. I remember talking to Scott Smith. Like I wanted to get into this space, and we ended up.
Remember you called me? I don't know if you remember. You called me up and said, John, I think I can compete and beat Qualtrics.
Turns out I couldn't. To skip everybody to the end.
Yeah.
So I bought a company down in Austin, Texas called Inquisit.
Okay.
With the money that I sold Silent Whistle for. And then we went off and built Allegiance. And that company was hard. That was a tough space. We like immediately went and tried to sell enterprise clients. And we did, which is probably the worst thing we ever could have done. Sold like JetBlue and American Express and like massive companies.
Was it real red ocean competition?
Yeah, it was. We were taking market share from market research firms. And we just it was hard. Like everything we did was hard there. Getting leads, selling, nurturing leads, selling new deals, implementing deals, renewing, everything was hard. And I started my career, this 23, 24-year-old kid that everyone kind of liked and thought was smart and whatever. And so I kind of had thought I was pretty good at this thing. And then Allegiance was tough. And meanwhile, Qualtrics just took over. SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics, and Medallia just took that space over. And it was like a real brutal awakening for me. Like, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe I'm just a fraud. Like I actually don't know what I'm doing. And that actually at the kind of end of my time there, I ended up hiring a new CEO because I'm like, I don't know what else to do. Like I've changed every other variable in this equation except for me. And then we ended up selling that company in 2014 to MaritzCX out of St. Louis. That became MaritzCX. But yeah, that was a tough business. That's actually a lot of folks that were at Allegiance have gone on to do really big things at other companies.
Yes.
And that's where we all learned it.
Yeah.
Like I would say any of us would say we learned way more there than like at Podium. Everything was easy at Podium. Like I went and did all the same things that I did at Allegiance at Podium and it all worked. And where none of it worked at Allegiance. So that's where, I learned a lot at that company. It wasn't like a big financial win for any of the investors or anything.
I was 3X.
Okay.
From you.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So 3X is a good single or double. Yeah.
So it was okay.
So thank you.
It was okay.
Yeah. Most of all, I got a good friend.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have a really interesting enterprise track record, right? Because I think even with our venture fund and a lot of the mentoring that we do within our boot camp ecosystem and Startup Ignition is just curriculum and content for entrepreneurs and startup founders. Like a lot of people want to enter the enterprise arena, right? Where they're just like, this is enterprise SaaS software. And, they start trying to get into that arena and sell and they get their butts kicked, right? It's like they have a great product or they think they have a great product, but they just can't sell. They can't get traction. They can't do. Like, I feel like your whole your whole life has been based around enterprise sales and even particularly in SaaS. So it's like,
I've kind of done both. So Allegiance was total enterprise. Podium was SMB. That we were like selling to
Podium
individual
was SMB.
dentists and car dealerships and stuff. But we grew a pretty big enterprise business there during that like kind of 5 years that I was there.
like a product line geared towards enterprise.
Yeah, we started going up market and selling 6 and 7 figure deals.
Yeah,
and so that's a healthy business at Podium now.
Take me before we get to Podium too much though, because I think we've got your history really good up to selling Allegiance to, and it becomes MaritzCX, right? And then you went to lunch with me, and I know you were on a self-discovery tour.
Yeah.
Because you even asked, you wanted to maybe mentor some other up-and-coming CEOs. You wanted to get mentored by others. You wanted to be around. So that's where I'm foggy on what happened from there to you joining Eric at Podium.
What year was this?
2014.
2014.
So I sold Allegiance in 2014, and I had to stick around for a year, and I literally had no direct reports. I didn't have anything to do. So I took a bunch of just advisors to lunch and people that I hadn't seen in a while. And my message was like, hey, do you like have anything I can do? Someone I can mentor, a board I can sit on. And so John was one of those. And two others that I took to lunch during that time was Sid Chrome and Hook at Album and Gavin Christensen at Kickstart. And they both said the same thing. They're like, we just wrote a little check into this little company called RepDrive. These 2 young guys, and they need like someone like you. So ended up meeting Eric and Dennis in, I don't know if it was late 2014 or early 2015. I kind of just served as like an advisor board member for the first like 6 months or so in 2015.
Dev Mountain was going hot and heavy when Eric had left to do that. That's right, that timing. Yeah.
And then I was like kind of that fall is when we started talking about like, what if I just came and did this full time with you guys? Because my year had come up, I think, in November. And so I started with those guys in December, and it was like off and running. I think there was like 8 or 9 people when I went there, and that thing, everything worked from the beginning. We went from like $1 million to $100 million of ARR in like a little over 4 years. It was crazy.
Yeah. Is that so? Why? Why did it just work?
Product market fit.
They just had a product that no one in the market had never seen, and it was just working.
So I remember our first board meeting. They had one sales rep, Chase Richardson. Shout out to Chase. He was closing like $100K a month by himself. And I remember seeing their financial projections, and July it dipped, and I'm like, oh, is this a seasonality thing? And they're like, no, Chase is going to Lake Powell. Like it was literally one person.
Hey, Chase, I'm going to Lake Powell in July too. See you down there.
So, but the reason I got so excited about it is every time they added a rep, and this was the key during those 4 years, is when we would add a new quota-bearing sales rep, by month 3, we could get them to full quota. And that worked from the beginning. And that was my one question I had as we started to scale that thing. I'm like, how long will this last before we start cutting, smaller pieces of a bigger pie? Because when you add a quota-bearing sales rep, you need to be confident the pie is going to grow with it. And you're not closing the same business with more people.
Yeah.
And Podium from the beginning, we could onboard and get reps ramped really fast.
Can I ask some questions from outside looking in? You know, I'm a kind of, know about a lot of this stuff, and I also kind of think academically around the patterns and the templates. So what I saw, first of all, this is just a huge industry, because review management and managing reviews that was the era where, oh my gosh, our business is going to live and die by reviews. Tyler at Dev Mountain, their review site was called coursereport.com.
For the boot camp
For the boot camp industry. They had a specific one
that
if you got less than a 5-star on Course Report, it could hurt dramatically your revenues.
Yeah.
So if they ever got anything less than a 5, he and his co-founders and that whole company went on DEFCON 5 to correct that 4 or 3 up to a 5 and do whatever they could. Yeah. And that's what you're doing generally for all these SMBs, right? At Podium, is helping that problem. But this is huge, because there were 1 or 2 competitors bigger than Podium, I think.
Reputation.com was there. Birdeye was there.
Yeah,
Birdeye,
I'm just saying. But what I started realizing,
we flew by both those companies in a couple of years.
Yeah, but as I watched Podium grow, I'm going, this is a big industry. There's a lot of big players here that are getting fast growth. And you guys, I know, went Zoom, so it just tells you that Podium tapped into a societal change of where
timing was perfect.
With the up and coming millennials and Gen Z and all that, you better not have a bad review.
But it's cool that you point out that metric of that sales that you can onboard and get a salesman or person or woman to quota, within 3 months or whatever. Because I remember a ton of my acquaintances and friends got sales jobs at Podium, and I remember one time back in however long ago it was, like, yeah, there's like 300 in our sales department. I'm like, 300 reps.
I know. Let me ask about.
I'm like, yesterday this was a startup. What are you talking about? 300 reps? But it's because of that metric right there. You're just like, put it on. Let's go.
The word on the street is that you guys were geniuses, and I don't. You and Eric and whoever came up with it, but I heard that you really also started breaking the sales reps into being special in the SM. It's for our viewers and listeners. It's really hard to do a startup, and you go in and tell investors or other stakeholders, "Yeah, I'm going to go after the SMB market." That's usually investors run away from that because it's so hard,
high cost
of
acquisition.
But that's why everybody wants to tackle enterprise. We see so many companies coming in. I'm enterprise SaaS. I'm like, are you enterprise SaaS? Because they want to be enterprise SaaS.
But the SMB, what I've heard Podium's genius was, and I want you to tell me the story if this is correct, because we never had a chance to talk about it, but that you started breaking, like 10 people would really know one SMB vertical super well, and they focused on that. Then this pod of you like broke them into pods.
It was all,
is that right?
It was all sold by industry, and then it would be SMB, mid-market, and enterprise. But they became specialists because in that world, since we weren't the system of record, we had to integrate with the CRMs, with the systems of record. And those were like really long tail lists of companies. And so they needed to become experts. So if a car dealership said, "Oh, we use CDK," they knew immediately what that meant.
So like you had one or more sales reps. All they did was go after car dealerships.
Your car dealerships in these 3 states, and your car dealerships in these 3 states, and your HVAC in those 3 states, and your medical in those 3 states.
When I heard that, and I don't know who I heard it from, but when I heard this, I go, yeah, that's how you have to tackle SMB. But you have to be SMB is hard.
It's hard.
The viewers and listeners need to know what Podium pulled off in SMB takes everything coming together right.
Yeah, I mean, to go from 1 to 100 in 4 years and burn through like less than $40 million to do it was insane.
Yeah,
insane. It was near perfect product market fit. And then once you have that product market fit, then that gives you the luxury to start building new products. And that's what happened there, like communication tools and scheduling tools and, different automation tools along the way. And so it was crazy.
So how do you know, as an operator and something that you're obviously very gifted at, looking at an industry or your metrics or your product or your startup or your business model, and you're saying, "Oh, we need to press here." How do you discover, for all the entrepreneurs out there, how did you come across that sales metric, and how did you know, okay, if we do X, we will get Y, right?
Every founder out there has to be a go-to-market metric assassin. You don't have to be the best sales rep in the world. You don't even have to know how to hire sales reps, manage sales reps, but you have to understand the metrics of your go-to-market motion. For every
dollar I'm putting in, I'm getting $1 back.
You know exactly what you're getting out from a marketing, from sales, BDR, whatever it is. And we were really good at that. If you're looking for resources, Bessemer put out a lot of reports on this. Like they invented, actually, so you remember the magic number? That was invented actually by Omniture here. Josh invented the magic number and ACV. And they were like kind of the first to start to use these SaaS metrics of like, okay, if you put $1 into sales and marketing, what comes out the next quarter? And that was the magic number.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then Bessemer took that and they're like, well, but not all companies are created equal. They have different gross margins. So let's adjust for gross margin. Mm-hmm. And that became CAC ratio.
Yeah, the CAC.
Yeah. Footnote, this is why viewers and listeners need to understand. They need to understand what gross margin means. So keep going.
Mm-hmm. So wait, like important. The LTV to CAC ratio hasn't been around for that long?
That was new. No, Bessemer started to come out with all that stuff probably about 2010, 11. They started putting papers out because they were investing in every SaaS company. So they just started to benchmark metrics.
I feel like I was taught LTV to CAC at Brigham Young University.
You graduated in 2012. So
maybe.
The last couple of years.
I don't know. That's crazy.
Yeah,
we were starting to talk that language to 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because before then, like when Omniture went public, that was probably 2007 or 8 or something.
2006.
It was ACV, TCV, and the magic number.
Yeah, and they called it the magic number.
Yeah. The magic number. That's what Josh James named it. Was the magic number.
Josh.
And it was sales and marketing costs divided by growth the next quarter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. So you're saying you have to stay on top of your metrics.
Maniacal, like how quickly reps get to quota, how quickly like rep retention metrics. But like I don't know what I've been gone 5 years now, but like there was a year we had 90% quota attainment by rep, overall quota attainment of 107%. Like it was nuts. Like I remember hearing Qualtrics and what's normal in a software company is about 40% of reps are hitting quota.
Yeah.
And that was the secret sauce of Podium. Is the way, and I don't want to take all the credit. Nico he's with me now at Entrata, but Nico ran marketing there, and then Than Hancock, who ran sales at Podium and still is there. He's the chief sales officer. And then the financial team, we had a really good FP&A team, Colin Robinson and a bunch of guys that that thing was it was a machine.
So I don't know if you have anything to follow up for that, but take me then now from that, because you keep saying.
Yeah, I do have one.
Okay, go.
Okay, so I want to do this. So, Eric was also a student of mine. I mentored him a little bit when he came around, and the rep drive idea made it circles, and we did the speed dating with investors and stuff and gave feedback, and he's talked about it a little bit. So that was back in that day. But Eric's a pretty strong personality, founder, okay? And then you come in afterwards to kind of bring some more mature operation skills. That's how I'm viewing it. Is that accurate so far?
Totally, yeah.
Okay. So, and you said, Album and Sid and even in Kickstart Seed Fund with Gavin, they kind of recommended that. So you come in, how did that dynamic work between you and Eric? Because you were president, he was CEO, right?
Mm-hmm, yep.
How did you make that work? Because that's not going to work for a lot of people, but how did you make it work?
Yeah, I think it took both of us. We were attached at the hip for several years there. And
were you co-CEOs? No, you were CEO from day one.
No. I was the president.
You were president, and because I was like, I remember Eric always having that CEO title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So basically, you were kind of COO president, and he was CEO. Yeah.
Yeah. The way we the reason it worked well is we had some complementary skill sets, and we were both really good communicators. I think we both were pretty likable. I think both knew how to interview, and culture and that kind of stuff was all very, very similar. He was really good on the product side, the design side, the UX side. I remember hearing a quote about Mark Zuckerberg of someone saying, Mark just knows what people will use. And what Eric was really good at, his dad owned tire shops growing up, and Eric just had this innate ability to know what an SMB would use. Yeah. If we'd look at okay, here's what we're thinking for this new product or some improvements or enhancements or whatever, he'd be like, they won't use that.
That doesn't make sense.
And he just knew. Yeah. And he just knew they won't use that. And he'd say my dad would never do that. He would never use that. And he was right.
It's probably, he always had his dad as a use case in the back of his hand. Would my dad do that? No.
Yeah. And then I bring in this kind of operational math and a big network. And so I could add a bunch of executives to the team, and had kind of a fundraising network, and I'd raised money before and done a lot of that stuff. So yeah, it worked out well, but it took both of us, and it's still tough. Then I ended up getting pretty sick at the end of 2019 and left and took a year off after Podium. I remember. Yeah, I loved that. I loved that place.
Yeah. Anything you want to share about that? Was you just had a rough year there? Because I remember we haven't talked about it. You don't have to talk about it here if you don't want to.
No, I've talked about it with Clint Betts on the Silicon Slopes podcast. I just kind of lost myself. Yeah. And at the end of 2019, I remember going to the Christmas break thinking if I can just recharge, I'll go down to my place in San Clemente. And if I can just recharge for a week or two, I think I'll be okay. And then I ended up I got bronchitis and influenza B and some bacterial colitis, something weird. And I was in an emergency room at 2 a.m. in Mission Viejo with someone coming off a drug overdose in the room next to me, screaming at the top of their lungs. And I was like, I'm going to be rich and dead. Yeah. And that's just I'm not doing it. I called our partner Miles at Excel the next day and was like, I'm out, and not in a few months, I'm out.
That day.
And then I flew here and kind of told the crew, and I was gone. It was was that a hard pill for them to swallow? Was that impactful? That had to rip and replace that. It ended up being even worse because COVID hit 2 months later.
Oh. I was just gonna say, this is 2 months before COVID.
COVID hit 2 months later. Yeah, it's taken me several years to get over the guilt of how quickly I left there. Yeah. And yeah, but that year was really important for me.
Yeah. 2020.
The world kind of stopped and gave you time to think about it.
Yeah. Well, no, I lost my identity. I talked about this with Clint last week. Allegiance was so hard and not super successful. I kind of became that negative vision. I attached myself to that, the badness of and the failure that I perceived failure. Ryan was going off.
Allegiance wasn't even a failure, though.
Well, but my problem was I was comparing myself to everybody. Yeah. Qualtrics has taken off, and Omniture, and Domo, and Pluralsight, and Entrata, and I'm like, I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing here.
Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. And then I had the reverse problem at Podium. Then all of a sudden it's we raised money from Excel and Google Ventures, and everybody likes me again, and this is super awesome. And I detached my identity to that, the goodness of it. And then I was shocked when I stopped working in early 2020. my phone stopped ringing instantly. Text gone, Slack deleted, email. Like, it was really eerie how quickly everything went away. And it kind of forced me into figuring out, like, who am I? What am I going to do next? Like, what do I like to do? Like, who do I actually want to be? And I spent like 9 months kind of riding my bike and going through, it was like a tough mental health year for me, like everyone during COVID, but trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do next? Like, and that's where I figured out, I don't know if I'm a great founder. I was actually going to try and start a business, but then I ended up coming back to Utah and talking to Dave, and he's like, hey, here's this business and I don't necessarily have the energy to take it to the next level. Why don't you come and do this? And so he was, like, that's a job I probably was not qualified for. I had 2,500 employees. And when he first brought it up, I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do is go run a 2,500 person company. But he probably saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. So yeah, I joined at the end of 2020 there. And
so you took from like February of 2020 all the way till when you joined Entrata?
I just joined Entrata in December.
Yeah. Wow. And what did you discover in that? I want to hit on that just for a second. What did you discover in that time period? Like, what did you cling to? What did you do? How did you get back to a spot where, like, okay, I can go back to this operating role? What did you do? Because I kind of felt that a little bit on a much more mini scale when I sold my company back in 2016 and had all the success. And I found that once I was the it boy there for like a 6 to 8 month period where everybody wanted to talk to me, every article wanted to, interview me, every podcast wanted to have me on there because I was like the faddish thing. And then after that, like, it was the same thing, like text messages died down, Slack messages died down. I left that company and I was like, what am I doing next? And it was a hard period for me. It's not tough. Maybe as much as yours. I feel like yours is a lot. But what did you do? How did you overcome?
We just need to figure out how to prepare people for it. There's a documentary Michael Phelps did with HBO about this with Olympians. And Olympians from young ages have, like, they're told what to eat, how long to sleep, how to train. They have every resource in the world for them. And the second they're not useful to the Olympic team anymore, it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
And they all struggle with depression after.
Here's the old guy coming out of me. I'm telling you, this is in every field of endeavor. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Even people in ecclesiastical settings, they're super important, then they're not. Business settings, super important, then they're not. And that, it's called the blue period. And there's a blue period you go through. And it's a weird period. And I've had that in my life. We've all had that at different aspects.
Well, I think it's very common in the startup ecosystem because, you're riding high and people want a piece of the pie. And once that pie is done and it's run its course, it's like, oh yeah, like you do tie yourself to that identity.
Like
really
during that year, I was like, I guess I was just a buck to everybody.
Yeah.
Or a job.
You kind of feel that way.
Yeah.
But so how did you overcome? What did you do? For me, it was very much so family, vacation time, not clinging myself to business antics and business type motivation anymore. It was like, what am I doing in my inner circle? What's my relationship with my spouse? What's my relationship with my kids? Because when I had my very first child is when I started that business and I grew it all the way up to acquisition. And I kind of missed like the small younger years of my very first child. And so I kind of recognized that. And so I spent a ton of time just like, I'm going to focus on just being a dad. And I know that sounds really cliche, but it was like, that's what I missed when I was in the business world. And so family kind of re-gave me that purpose. But like for you, I'm not saying, is it family or whatever? What was it?
No, like I said, if there's those 4 categories of life, the 2 I picked were family and career. So I was a really present dad. Like, I coached AAU all growing up. I was at football practices. Like, I tried to be there for my kids.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I kind of lost myself.
Yeah.
No, like, I'm a person, I learned this from an exec coach about 5 years ago. She said these words to me after kind of interviewing a bunch of people around me. And she came back and said, your currency in life is relationships. Yeah. And I just lost track of that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so, like, good friend, like, I haven't talked to John in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, I have good friends I haven't talked to for a long time. And that's kind of what I've been doing the last few years, is realizing, like, and that's why I went back to work again, is I realized that year off is what I really like is just doing something special with people I like.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about.
Yeah.
So relationships
and
came from business.
Yeah. Like, some of my best friends came from all these companies, and whether the company's successful or not,
and you're a builder,
it was a great relationship.
You're a builder grower. This comes back to a lot of basic things about humans, just humans, male humans generally. Not everything's the same. they get a lot of their sense of value, self-worth from building and growing things, right? And then also relationships play into that. So and it's kind of funny. It's business is weird. I went public and dealt with a bunch of New York crowd and all that, and I didn't really like it. What we do, Adam, to let you know about us, we actually teach a lot of entrepreneurs. You don't have to go for, even though you're involved with a unicorn and your operation skills are incredible and what you've done at Entrata has been amazing. There's also a lot of people, there's a lot of pressure to go from zero up to that. Like what Dave did to go from 0 to $1 billion is hard. And there's a massive amount of pressure. And if you're going to be that founder, it can really make your life go into a weird places, right?
It's why when like Jensen Huang was asked, would you start NVIDIA again? And he said no.
Yeah, I know.
He's like, no, I would not. And I bet if you asked Dave, would you do Entrata again? He'd probably say no.
No.
I helped from square one Pura with Bruno, okay? And he one time, like in year 5 or something, I go, you have fun, you're still enjoying it. He goes, and then and he literally told me, if I had $2 ago, I probably wouldn't start this company. But now it's 200 million revenue worth $2 billion, whatever it is. I mean, but I guess what I want to say, what we kind of espouse and are helping a lot of entrepreneurs find out, and there's a new thing they're called elephants, like unicorn versus elephant business, right? Where, it's okay maybe to not go for complete unicorn and have a decent company that still makes you wealthy. Yeah. But your life is not turned so upside down. Everybody's going to find what they're good at and what they want to be and what they like. But I do think a lot of people that get their self-worth from their net worth, or a self-worth from building a unicorn, and then go up, you can get lost a little bit in that chase, because not everybody really can be a unicorn builder. It's really hard to go from 0 to unicorn.
Well, that's something that I've just learned about myself in the last year, probably, is I even had a hard time differentiating the journey from the achievement.
Yes.
And from a little kid, young age, I learned very quickly I had skills and talents that allowed me to achieve things that made people like me.
Yeah.
And that just continued on all the way up into my 40s. But now I've learned, like, it's actually the journey I really like. But I was so focused on being the BYU Entrepreneur of the Year and being whatever CEO of the year and raising money and selling. Like, I became so obsessed with the outcomes. But it's actually
the building process.
Like.
Yeah.
No, Tyler, it's so funny. We have these. The climb up the mountain is way more fun than being at the summit.
Yeah, and that lasts for 1 second. You're like, well, the wire came in.
I was just about to say, Adam, it is fun to refresh your bank account and see the digits come in, but also my fondest memories is in the building phases, not the second I refresh that bank account.
Every time that's happened to me, I'm like, all right, what do you guys want to have for dinner?
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's literally it's not that cool at all.
Okay, I have a story.
Do you remember Steve Jenkins, though? Do you remember that name at all? Steve Jenkins?
Windows95.com.
Windows95. This is forerunner to you as one of the great BYU student entrepreneurs. Go way back before you. That's like 10, 15 years before you. Steve Jenkins said what happened to him. He created V servers and, what's the chip company? Micron? Micron bought V servers for $45 million. And so it was 2 founders. And so they each made, in the, 10, 15 million, whatever the number was, right? And the money comes in and it wasn't over the phone. And it was a fax comes in confirming the receipt in the bank account, right?
Yeah. So
he's at home with his wife and the fax comes in and the money's there and he goes, yes, I'm the man. I'm the man. This is incredible. And he takes over his wife and goes, look at this. This is incredible what we achieved. She looks at it and goes, great, take out the garbage.
My story is very similar to that, where when I sold Dev Mountain and I got my first millions in a bank account, right, where it's like, okay, wow, I'm set, I'm good to go. Then I really heavily start getting invested in angel investing, right, and writing checks and helping support the next wave of entrepreneurs and doing a lot of the father-son investments that we did for 6, 7, 8 years. And I remember one of our angel investments turned into something really fruitful, and like, it was a big deal, but at the same time, the money hit my bank account and it was just like, I made more than what I sold Dev Mountain for. And I was like, okay, like, yeah, literally what's for dinner?
We were
like
first investors in Route.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's crazy when you do it the first time, how impactful it is. And then when more starts coming in, how little it means to you, because I think you do need to start distancing yourself from the outcome and more focus on the journey and the building of everything else.
Your net worth is not your self-worth, and you got to find it. So, and Adam, I think even though we haven't seen each other a lot in the recent years, I think I got to know you pretty well, and you definitely are. You like being around others and being engaged in a good cause of building and growing something that's meaningful and changes people's lives for the better and brings great product and service to the market. And you like being around the people and doing that. I know you enjoy that. And I could see how you could fall into that blue period afterwards when it kind of is over. And now what are you going to do next? That's a tough period, but it is forever. Tyler came to me afterwards, and after the company, he goes, Dad, I'm not as motivated now. I don't feel as motivated to do things because there was nothing left to do in that. And matter of fact, the people that bought him, they kept him on and kept the founders on, but didn't give him any equity. So it was just a high paying job, salary wise.
Yeah, it was 100% buyout.
What I said, Tyler, that's how it is. There's nothing like the startup phase and that building, and then your friends are by you and you're building something cool. That's the feeling. Or even what you're good at. You're so good at large operations now. You took a company from 1 billion to 4 billion, and you took, I don't know where Podium was when you joined, but you took it up to the heights it done. You're good at what you do. And I know it's that building that's giving you that sense of value, because that's what you do. That's why, by the way, if you look historically, when men retire, they die really quickly after retirement in a lot of ways, unless they're fitness gurus or whatever. But if you just work, and you love that, and then all of a sudden you retire and you go, what do I have to do? And they just give up. That's something you do. You don't want to be that way.
So Dave comes to you end of 2020, tracks you over to Entrata. How is that process? What's like, you come in and Dave's like, I want you to be CEO. That's what the conversation you had with Dave from the get-go? Was your involvement was to be CEO?
Yeah.
Was Dave CEO at that time?
Dave was the CEO from
and
the
he
very
handed the
beginning.
reins over to you and was like, I want you to take this thing and go.
2,500 employees. What made you want to do that?
Yeah.
The universe said you're doing this. That's how that happened. So it was, I'd never done anything at that scale. Podium was almost 1,000 employees when I left. So it was,
I mean, is there that much difference? 1,000 to 2,000 employees?
What was really different about the two companies is, so Podium got built from the ground up as like a modern SaaS metric driven business. I had any metric at my disposal at all time. And then I go here, and this is an 18-year-old bootstrap business.
Right.
Dave raised $1 million the last round in 2005, and then just built everything at break even. Like I mentioned this before, this company should not exist. A BYU student should not have been able to build this business. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
But it was run still like a just massive startup. Like I asked, when I would ask what's our ARR, we didn't track that.
What?
What's our gross retention? Like none of that was tracked. And so, but asking some questions, I was like, I think this is like $160 million ARR business that's profitable, and I'm pretty sure the net retention is probably close to 120. And so I was like, there's something here.
Yeah.
Joined, and that's a trippy thing to go enter that big of a business with an established culture.
Yeah.
Like that was probably the hardest part of that, was the cultural side of like easing my way in while wanting to kind of like change some things and modernize a few things without sending the messages like you were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
There's another way to do some of this stuff. So
yeah, it's just cool. I got to tip my hat again to Dave though. Dave Bateman, he got to about $1 billion valuation, still owned 50 to 60% of the company. I mean, that's really hard to achieve in today's world. Really hard, because you're going to need to raise a lot of capital and give up a lot of equity usually to get to something like that.
Wait, so prior to your involvement coming into Entrata, Dave had only raised $1 million on it?
Thinking that he raised a little, it was called angel round. Now you call them seed rounds, from Gary Williams and Craig Earnshaw and those guys.
Those guys, yeah.
And then Nobu put in a bigger check a few years later.
Yeah.
That was it. Nobu's still on the board.
Yeah. Wow. And then, but now I feel like I read that Entrata's raised 500. Is it now 700?
So we did a minority round in mid 2021 after I joined. It was crazy when I went there. Nobody knew. I didn't know what it was. I actually worked at Entrata. You may not remember this. I worked at Property Solutions in 2003.
You did?
And
I don't remember that.
Dave so I worked there, and he was the one that was like, "You're good at this. Go do something." And that's when I went and launched Silent Whistle. So I actually worked there for about 4 months.
Wow.
I did not know that.
So, and even watching it be built, I didn't know what it had become. Like my thought was like, oh, this is like some cute apartment app thing where people pay rent. Like I had no idea. And I don't think anyone really did, but the investment community definitely knew what was going on there. Cause when I joined, it started to get out like, oh, maybe there will finally be an opportunity to put money in here. And we never even raised. And we probably had 15 term sheets. I had one texted to me by a number I didn't have in my phone.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah.
And then Ryan Smith and Todd Peterson, they were longtime friends and knew the company well. They were like, hey, Silver Lake had just spun Qualtrics out of SAP to take them public. So Ryan's the one that's like, hey, this feels like a Silver Lake deal. Do you know those guys? I'm like, no, I've never talked to them. We gave him the data room, and within 24 hours, Silver Lake knew that business better than we did. It was really, really impressive. Wow. So they led that minority round of 500 in mid 2021. Dragoneer came into that. Steve Young's firm, HGGC, came in. Yeah. And then Ryan and Todd put some cash in, and then we were off and running. And then that same group of investors about 6 months later ended up buying the founder out. And so that's still who's there now is kind of Silver Lake, Dragoneer, Nobu, HGGC. And then we just brought Blackstone in for $200 million just a couple months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a roll call that is.
What was a real quick question on that fundraising? What was the decision making on that fundraise? Did Dave, kind of been bootstrapping it, taking minimal funds? Like, did you come in and collaborate with Dave on that decision and say,
for sure. Yeah.
And what was that process like? Was it like, hey, you kind of metricized the whole Entrata, dashboards and got all of the metrics in place, and you're like, wow, if we pour gasoline on this fire, we can take this thing to
the company
new heights.
The company was pretty data driven, but it wasn't data driven in a way that like an outside investor would want to see it. Mm-hmm. Like I had to help build our first customer ARR file, just simple things like that. So it was more just like, I didn't really necessarily bring much new. It was more like building a translation layer from like the way it was run to like what a Silver Lake would want to see.
You saw basically this company was a solid company that with some kind of more formal financial acumen brought to the table, it could go to the next level.
Yeah.
And Dave recognized you could do that for him.
Yeah. And then it needed an exec team. So that's the other thing. This is the best tech exec team I think ever assembled in Utah. They are so good. They're all way better at their job than me. Catherine Wong, longtime Omniture Domo. JT came with me from Allegiance. He was with me at Podium. He came over. Yeah. Nico, our CMO, came from Podium.
Well, you have a career to pull from, and you have an all-star team now.
They're really like every exec meeting. I'm like, why did you guys all come and work for me? You're all amazing.
That's awesome. You're the Pied Piper. They follow you. Okay, so what's the future of Entrata? Like, you announced this round. You achieved a $4 billion valuation on that round with Blackstone. Where are you guys going? What are you doing? What's the future? What's the next 3 to 5 years look like for Adam Edmunds?
So for the first time in my career, I'm not looking at the outcome. Like this is literally the first time I haven't been like, oh, now I can go public or Qualtrics sold for 12, so I need to sell for 12.1. Like I don't actually care.
Yeah.
We're just going to keep this thing my goal. Actually, the reason I came to
even though
Entrata,
Ryan would probably love that $12 billion exit.
Hey, he's on the cap table. He'll be good. I came here because I'd never been a part of a generational business that would last decades. Mm-hmm. And this one I knew immediately. I'm like, this company will be here in 30 years. Mm-hmm. And those are rare. Like as big as Novell was, gone. Yeah. WordPerfect, gone. The only one we've really had here in tech, because like Larry H. Miller, there's other companies, but in tech, it's really Omniture with becoming the Adobe campus. Yeah. That I think that Adobe campus will be there in 10 or 20 years. And that's what this company will be. And
how well Adobe did after buying Omniture. Yeah. I've heard the numbers. Yeah. It's incredible. I want all the viewers and listeners hearing Adam. I want you all to know Adam was a student starting off just like any of you and the career path he's had, and he's captain of industry now, and all the things you're hearing. This is what's great about America, what's great about entrepreneurship and what you can do and what you can build. And it's not just about revenue and wealth creation, all that. The products of your companies made people's lives better. Yeah. You've helped companies and people do things better, have richer experiences in the way they do things and in their life and in their business life. So this is what's great about entrepreneurship. And, I met you at square one and look at where you've gone and what you've done. And that's what's possible. And I've had the pleasure in my life of scores and scores or even hundreds of people I've had the same stories with, like with you. And it's just been so rewarding. And I'm super proud of you, Adam, for also, going through that tough period and then finding yourself and knowing what you're good at and what you like and what you want out of life. That's important too.
And I know that your advice has been enjoy the journey, not look at the outcome so much, but like go back 20 years. What are you telling yourself? Like what are you telling this budding
let's
entrepreneur?
end on tips from Adam.
What's the budding entrepreneur need to know?
So someone asked me this at the Silicon Slopes podcast recently, someone in the audience, what would you tell yourself when I knew you, 2003? And I got super emotional. We went really personal with it, but I would go back and tell myself, don't lose yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's already going to be hard enough. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't worry about obviously anyone who goes into entrepreneurship, I think, is doing it for the financial aspect.
Yeah. That has to be there.
Yeah.
It's a super important part of it.
But, don't lose sight of those relationships. Like that's really what you carry from this. Cause I can promise you in 30 or 40 years when I'm not working, that's the only thing I'll remember.
Yeah.
I won't remember the LTV to CAC ratio at Podium, and I won't remember the net retention rate at Entrata, but I'll remember the people that I did it with.
But the success does aid those relationships, right? It allows you to make core memories. It allows you to do things and have things, but also that's not the end all say all goal. It's you can have those relationships without the wealth creation or without the success.
Some of my best relationships were at Allegiance, which was not like super successful. It's kind of like we went through all these hard things together and you stay connected for life.
Yeah, the war stories stick with you the most.
Yeah. So when I start somebody off on a journey, and I routinely say to them, Tyler's heard me say it 1,000 times, I say, you're going to learn things from me that'll help you become wealthy. You're going to be able to build companies and be a company builder and create wealth. But I want you to know that more than half the time, some of those people have some really hard times after they create the wealth, and tough times can come. And you've shared some years that you've had, and you have to keep your head on straight, and you have to realize that people and relationships are more important, and that's what really brings the richness in life. And so
for sure.
it's really good lessons. And I'm, sometimes we have to go through tough things. So, I'm sorry the tough times you went through,
it's all good.
But at the same time,
we learn.
You're also one of the things that we have to remember too, you're creating jobs that help people have good lives and buy homes, put roots down in a community and make a nice life. That's what entrepreneurs' main thrust is helping society have people with good jobs so they can be great contributors in society. And that's a super important role that government and everybody needs to remember. And we have to remember in our laws and our taxes, everything, to make sure that we make entrepreneurs' lives as easy as possible, build these great companies. Like Entrata is now, is it over 2,500?
It's still right around the same.
2,500 employees, but 2,500 employees every day of your life, the company you're sitting at top of is helping them have a great life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
On our previous episode, we had one of our portfolio company CEOs come in, and we sat down and talked with him, and he was like, yeah, I asked him, how many people are at your company? He's like, yeah, we're like 60. I know that's on a smaller scale, but he's like, it's cool to like have a company meeting and be like, wow, like this business, my startup is paying, for their lives. It's their livelihood. Like it's supporting this many people, their kids, their activities, their life. Right. Yeah. And it's really cool. Even though it's on not a 2,500 person scale, it's still cool to see that growth. And he was mentioning the same thing. Like it gives him fulfillment. Right.
And it's important, I think, for founders to realize that the folks who come and work with you are just inherently probably not going to care as much as you. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like you've seen a lot get really, they set these expectations that you need to care about this as much as me. And like, I'm providing all this for you. So you need to, deliver back. And it's like, no, they want to like be soccer. Like some of these folks, they just want to be soccer coaches. They want to do whatever. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That's where you gotta, founders can't take that too. That's great advice.
Okay.
Adam, it's been so great having you here.
Good to see you guys.
Adam's journey is insanely cool. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for making time. I think we can probably wrap this up into enjoy the journey. Don't look at the outcome so much, but also be maniacally obsessed with metrics. And that's what makes good founders, leaders, executors.
A healthy obsession.
A healthy obsession, because we all admit sitting at this table, some of the best are psychotic, but be healthily psychotic, right? Not obsessively psychotic, right? All right. Okay. So next time, thank you so much for listening, tuning in. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Adam's story is one worth sharing, and we're so grateful for him coming on the podcast. But that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.